he does buck when other people have attempted to ride. You bring out a saddle and he goes berserk, completely scared of it. He's unrideable.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I am coming to you from Texas, and we're at Windy Hill Equine Rescue, which you remember we did a fundraiser for a few months ago. And I'm doing a horse development camp here. So owners are bringing me 10 horses, and then I ride the horses for the week, and then they do a clinic with them on the weekend. And so it's been a great camp, very popular. I've been doing this for like 8 or 9 years now. And anyways, we have one horse that I thought would be interesting to you. His name is Scout. He's kind of flunked out of many training programs. He's kind of notorious for bolting away when the saddle comes out, bucking with the saddle, and he has not accepted a rider yet. They've tried to ride him a few times, and it's kind of resulted in him getting scared and bucking and not having a very good experience. So we're gonna see if we can help him get more comfortable.
Scout is now 6. The last 3 years have been visiting multiple trainers, extended periods of time with some trainers, trying to get him under saddle. And he is great on the ground, will do groundwork with me, is great, you know, grooming, farrier, all of that. You bring out a saddle and he goes berserk, completely scared of it. So he's unrideable. And it can be scary at times, right? When you are trying to saddle maybe another horse and he's nearby and he has the same reaction. And so my hope is that spending time with Ryan, we can get a good understanding of maybe what Scout's triggers are, what we can do with Scout, and really I'm just trying to figure out what his future is. Is his future as a Liberty horse, as a riding horse, which is what I'm hoping? Is he going to be, you know, a pasture ornament? So really just trying to figure out what he's capable of and how we can work through what's bothering him now. So Scout also, one of the reasons I would love to say that he could be my jumper is Scout has a tendency to try to go out and over. So he has attempted to escape a full-size stall, ended up with 10 stitches across his head. He has successfully jumped out of torn gates out of 2 different round pens at 2 different facilities, and escaped multiple fence enclosures, typically by going over, and if the fence enclosure is too tall, he takes the top rung with him. So yes, lots of trouble keeping him in small spaces. Used to not be able to trailer load him. Luckily can now with a little bit of work. But yeah, he does not like to be confined. He's actually being very good right now. The worst thing he has ever done, you know, I've never tried to ride him. Well, I bellied him one time and he bolted out from underneath me and I fell down. He's never malicious, so that's a good thing. So I'd say probably the worst thing is just bolting away from me. Just, or even in the cross ties, sometimes he will have an extreme panic response and he'll pull back really hard. And I'd say that's probably one of the worst things. But he does buck when other people have attempted to ride him. So he does have a history of bolting and bucking under saddle.
Okay, so I'm gonna just try to get to know Scout here a little bit. And what I've been told is that he's pretty chill, leading, handling around on the ground. Apparently if you put him in a stall, he will try to crawl out of the stall. He's broken several round pen gates, things like that. But apparently everything changes kind of when the saddle comes out and when you think about riding him. And so I'm just gonna see if I can get to know him a little bit on the ground. And whenever I hear of a horse that's been saddled multiple times but has not accepted the saddle yet, one of the first things I'm thinking to myself, again, making sure it's not pain and stuff. And a lot of people ask that in the comments. And I just want to preface this with, we always make sure the horse is sound and that pain is not the issue that's going on here. So this horse has had lots of vet work done in terms of checking him and diagnosing to see if any of that would be an issue. And that has not been found to be the issue. This is very much a behavioral issue, not a physical issue. Having said that, this actually isn't even a behavioral issue in my mind. This is actually more of a taming issue. Because if a horse is going to go into a full-blown bucking spree, it means that they are at an instinctual level of being scared, okay? And so we need to help him get more tame. And to me, that means 2 things. Number 1, I need to set it up in a way to have him comfortable enough to learn, okay? Which means I have to find a way to release him to the saddle. The second thing that it means to me is I need him to understand steady pressure more. Horses that are still going to those strong pre-animal instincts usually don't have a really high level understanding of steady pressure. So we're just gonna kind of see what we get into here. Hey, would you guys like to see more detailed training videos that show you step-by-step how to train your horse and work through common issues? We have a huge video library on my Patreon page, as well as dropping new videos every week. You can also send me a message on there and get questions answered about your horse. You can even send videos for me to coach. So it's a really great value at just $10 a month. Next January, it's gonna go up to $20 a month for all that. So if you wanna get in now for $10, make sure you get signed up, and I'll look forward to seeing you on there. So first thing, he's not totally paying attention to me. So I just want to establish a little connection and let him know that I know when he's paying attention to me and when he's not, okay? And so you see me just kind of move around him here, and those of you that watch other videos, you know that I'm really big on this idea of just kind of getting him checked in. I kind of like how he's hooked onto me. Now, this horse has been at trainers for over a year, okay? It's not like nothing has been done to this horse. He's untouched or unhandled. He's been handled a lot. It just hasn't gone super well to this point. So that's what we're here to kind of figure out. And this is not really about me coming out here and trying to just make him listen or ride him better than the next person did or something like that. This is about me trying to get to his mind and his emotions and helping him get more comfortable with the things that we're asking him to do. And that's what we have to find out. Can we help this horse get comfortable doing the things that we would like him to be doing? Now, the good news for Scout is his owner is fantastic, and he will always have a forever home with her no matter what. But that doesn't change the fact that she's got a lot of money into him, and she would like to be able to ride him someday. But I say that's fortunate for him because this is how a lot of horses end up at rescues, which again is kind of, that was the word apropos or ironic that we're here, because we're here at a rescue, and a lot of horses that flunk out of training programs is a point where the owner kind of gives up on them and they end up in a rescue situation. So he's handling this pretty well. Let's go ahead and put him on a circle. And we're going to see if we can create some nice lateral flexion on this circle. You know, when a horse is being defensive, one of the most common things they'll do is they'll kind of want to counter bend on a circle. So I'm really big on checking this part out here. So with my left hand, I'm kind of trying to be a post. My right hand, I'm pushing the ribs out. But he seems pretty relaxed. He doesn't seem very tight to me right now. So this is good. And again, this is kind of par for the course. This is what the owner has said to me, is that everything goes pretty well until you go ahead and put that saddle out. So I'm just going to kind of get to know him here a little bit. Well, there, he's kind of thinking away a little bit there. So I'm just trying to set a post with this hand so that he can find that circle around. And this is the start of asking these horses to turn loose to us being in control of everything. And that's going pretty well here. Got a little lick and chew at the end, so we're staying within his comfort zone here. The next thing I'm going to test out with him is a flag. And then we're also going to test him out with some steady pressure. So the next two tests that we're going to give him here is I have a rope that we're going to use to test him with some steady pressure. And then we're going to test a little bit with this flag here. I like the flag. Again, those of you that watch other videos, you know that I'm big on this, and you're going to see a pattern here if you watch through me evaluating some of these horses. The flag is really big rhythmic motion, you know. It's kind of like, number one, I have to see if Scout accepts the human, okay? I have to see if Scout accepts steady pressure. I have to see if he accepts rhythmic pressure and rhythmic motion. So this flag is representing rhythmic motion right now. And you can see he's not having any trouble with that. So this is a check. That was easy. That's great. So he's handling that. Let's see if we can move him off on the circle here. And what I like to do, you know, horses like Scout can tend to be a little bit goosey. And so I like to to, in some ways, kind of surprise him with the flag and kind of go from the ground on his back and just see if he can handle something kind of coming at him. You see him getting a little worried about that. You can see, so what's interesting is a lot of horses that you would think that are kind of problematic with things, you would think that they would just be high-headed and running around like crazy. And you're not seeing that from him. And if you've noticed, I've actually had to do more to get him to go versus getting him to slow down. So what does that tell us? That tells us that he's more introverted, okay? So he's more whoa than go. Now the problem with a horse being introverted is that it can appear to the rider or the handler that they're blowing up kind of out of the blue. Like everything was going fine, and then all of a sudden the horse blew up. And oftentimes what happens is when an owner starts off the story as everything was going fine until all of a sudden this happened, it usually means they were missing cues that the horse was bothered along the way because the horse was introverted. If the horse was more extroverted, that would be a horse that kind of wears their emotions on their sleeve a little more, and you would know right where they stand. It's like if I come home and Emily looks a little bit grumpy or something, and I say, "How's everything going?" and she says, "I'm fine." That's usually an indicator everything's not hunky-dory. And so we need to slow down, is my point. We need to slow down, and we need to figure out what's bothering them and help them to get more comfortable. And also with a horse like him, because he's wanting to slow down, I need to help him get comfortable in motion. He needs to get comfortable moving, not just release him standing still all the time, okay? Because again, introverted horses will tend to always get relief standing still, and I need him to get comfortable in motion, okay? Now, because of this horse's history of jumping out of pens when he gets bothered and feeling claustrophobic with the saddle, I'm going to go ahead and test out, as we have a goat sparring match going on behind us here. I'm going to test him out here with him feeling claustrophobic. And I'm going to put this rope on a leg. And again, part of the reason I'm doing this now is I want to release him to being saddled, okay? And once he's accepting the saddle, then I need to figure out a way to release him to being ridden, okay? So again, I'm going to put this here. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to put him in a little bit of a bind, okay? I'm going to ask him for something different, and I'm going to test how well he can work through this. So we're going to go ahead and move him out here. And I'm going to put a little feel on this rope, and we're going to see what his response is. Now his response was to stop. That was good. I like that he didn't freak out there. Now I want him to pick his foot up. Good. Let him accept that, then he can have it back. Good job, Scout. So he handled that very well, so that was good. So far, I'm not finding anything that really stands out to me. I have just observed that he's more introverted, and so that means he can be kind of hiding some of his feelings a little bit. And so I have to pay attention to the little details is what that means to me. But the fact that he's not being bothered by the flag, by bending his ribs, by this rope stopping him here, and the end result is I want him to stop and pick his foot up. That's why you see me approaching him here and doing that. But it's interesting because I was thinking that we were going to do some taming tests, but he's passing these taming tests. See him licking and chewing there? It means he just got comfortable. So that means he got a little bothered, but not very bothered, okay? Now, I'm really happy with how well he's handling that. So let's add a little bit of speed to it and see if that changes anything. Basically, we'll just do this out of a trot. And that was his best one yet. Okay. So we're not really gaining anything by doing that because that's not bothering him at all. And the goal is to find things that kind of bother him and help him understand that pressure more. But he's not really having any trouble with that, so that's really good. I think the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little speed we'll get him cantering around a little bit, and I'm going to use cantering to release him to saddle, but he's not giving me any reason to say that I couldn't saddle him at this point. So let me go ahead and get a longer rope. So to this point, I have not found a way to release him to being saddled. Nothing has upset him or bothered him, and so the only thing I can really do is just ask him to do some work here and ask him to canter on a circle. Well, he sure is a pretty horse. Nice canter, I like that. Again, he wants to stop. So we're just gonna ask him to do some work here in hopes that the cantering, theoretically, is harder work than standing still to be saddled and walking off with the saddle on. And that's kind of what we're gonna go with here. He's a little sensitive to that kiss noise, which can be good, but I don't know if I'd kiss to him if I was sitting on him just yet. But so far, I'm honestly a little bit surprised about all the trouble that I've been hearing about him, because he's not really showing me anything that's terrible. But again, we haven't saddled him yet. But just from his disposition innately here, it just doesn't seem that problematic to me. You know, most horses that are going to have trouble with the saddle would have trouble with the rope test that I just gave him, or more trouble cantering, or just more spooky or worried in general. And like, one of the ways that I know that he's not being super introverted or going to a point of being what we call catatonic, which is a state of learned helplessness, is because the whole time he's been blinking, he's licking and chewing, and he's just staying present with everything. So I know that we haven't tested him too much to this point. Now, another advantage to asking him to canter right now is that it's going to cause him to have to breathe. And horses that are introverted tend to hold their breath and breathe shallow. And people do the same thing. And so the noise that I like to hear, and again, any of you that have been watching my videos for a while, we like to hear this noise. And that means that horse is relaxing through their rib cage. So he's relaxed in his jaw, in his eyes, and his head coming down. Got the little head shake. He's getting loose there, licking and chewing. So that helped him loosen up a little bit. It's kind of the same idea of us going for a jog and exercising. It really helps us deal with stress and anxiety. And getting a horse to move their feet can also help that. And I got a little worried there. So we can tell we got his life up a little higher now that we've been cantering. But he's not blown out yet. Oh, there it is. There it is. I don't know if you guys could hear that on the mic or not, but he just gave us a little bit of a blowout. So that means I'm going to leave him alone. If he's trying to relax and decompress, I'm just going to let him be. And so hopefully what he's learning by interacting with me is that he gets a release of pressure every time he relaxes. Like right now. This is a great time to just hang out with him, okay? And I think a lot of times in training, these moments are undervalued. When a horse needs some soak time and decompression time, it's really our job to just stand here and do nothing and let them soak that in. I like to think of it as like a sponge in a bucket of water. It's going to soak up so much water, and once it's full, you can leave it in there longer, but it's not going to absorb. But if you can't just dunk it in the water and pull it out, it won't soak up any of that water, okay? Or any of that knowledge in this case. And so don't look past undemanding time here of just standing there hanging out with them. That's interesting. But it did kind of prove me right there a little bit, where seeing him in motion cantering did help him relax and decompress more than he had. And he's having to breathe. You can see his nostrils flaring a little bit. And we're showing you all the cantering work. It's not like we did something behind the scenes here before this. That's all the work that he's done, which is not much. Okay. So He's actually in a really good place right there. So I think I might canter him one more time, and then we'll go ahead and saddle him up. Now there he's giving me a slower trot. I like that. He's dropping his head. And so at this point, I'm kind of wondering to myself, what's all the trouble about with saddling? So we're about to find out, I guess. But at the same time, you know, and not everybody sets everything up this way. Like for me, I'm going at kind of an average speed that I go at, but I think for a lot of people, they might move around the horse a little faster than what I'm doing. And that might have been just enough to keep him bothered or keep him defensive. You know, it's kind of hard to say. But with sensitive horses, I'm telling you, all the sequence of things and the details, the little details, matters a lot to sensitive horses. And this is, to me, kind of the difference between a kid's horse or maybe an amateur show horse versus an open show horse, is the level of sensitivity and their tolerances for things, you know. More sensitive horses are just a little less tolerant. All right. I like what we got there. That's very nice. And you can see he's very present. The ears are going forward, licking and chewing, blinking. Everything's going pretty smooth there. So we're going to go ahead and saddle him up. We're over here at the saddle. I'm going to put my coils on the ground. Now you can see him wanting to smell the pad. Again, that's a very good sign. So I'll step back here. And the way I like to do it is kind of put it behind me here, let him check it out. You can see him kind of backing away. Now, something that's a little unique, I already had the saddle out here. I don't like to saddle a horse like this in the barn aisle. Obviously, you wouldn't want him to take off bucking down the barn aisle. So that seems like common sense to me. Oh. You see him get a little tight there, get a little bowed up. So I don't know, I mean, there you go. So he's okay with it there. So on and off a couple times. But see, he's going to appreciate the fact that I recognize when he gets bothered right there. He's looking at it a little bit cross-eyed. And I don't know if that's because it's something touching his back or if it's because it was above him. So that's a mental note that I'm going to take about this right now. Is like maybe he needs to see me above him a little bit in order to accept me on his back as well. And so we'll build what we call the stairway to heaven, and where we can stand on something tall, like a pedestal with a mounting block on top. And then I can be above him waving and that sort of thing. Now, most people saddle a horse from the horse's left side. I learned to saddle horses from both sides. It is efficient, but it's also just good for a horse to get handled from both sides of them. And so I'm going to go ahead and saddle him from his right side. And maybe this is a little bit of a workaround. Maybe this is a little different deal than what he's used to. I'm going to smell that there. I'm going to try to float that saddle up there nice and smooth. And that went pretty well, I would say. So far, so good, obviously. I like to have a little longer rope on him here because I'm not going to turn him loose. We're in an arena here, which is also kind of interesting to note, because when some of the video footage that I saw of him having issues with the saddle and the rider, he was in a round pen. And also what Jill told us was that he was jumping out of round pen. So he may have some associations with a round pen. And with a sensitive horse, it doesn't take that much to have what we call a one-time learning experience, where if they're already at kind of a heightened mental state and something scary happens, that only needs to happen one time in order for it to become a kind of a thing for that horse. So we're going to go ahead and make 3 wraps here. So I have this snug where it would stay with him to a degree, but I think you guys can see kind of how loose that is. And he's tightening up right now. When he relaxes, it'll be looser. I don't know if he's used to a back cinch or not, so I'm not going to make it super tight about there. So if he kind of, kind of hulks out, there's a little room for his belly to go there. But I don't want this to be a secret on here either. I don't want to make it so loose that it's a secret, but I don't want to cut him in half with it. So that's just kind of trying to balance everything here. You know what else I'm going to do? Because I'm going to go ahead and see if he will accept a snaffle too. I just want to see where he's at with it, to see if if he's got any bracer at all to this idea of having a snaffle on. He's avoiding it a little bit, nothing too dramatic. Okay, that was nice. So far so good. And his owner did bring a snaffle for him, and so I assume they've had it on. I think she did some long lining with him. You know, so this horse has had a lot of preparation, just not a lot of rides. We are fixed up here. So you can see him there. You can see his kind of mental state change there a little bit. Oh, and then he was kind of able to walk out of it. That's good. So far so good. I don't want him following me. You know, it can be dangerous to walk off in front of a horse that is kind of known for bucking with a saddle. So I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, the saddle's not very tight right now. And if he were to try to buck, I would do my best to stop him. I let a horse run around bucking the first couple times they get saddled. I prefer to let a horse explore and figure things out a little bit more on their own. I think it yields a better result than us helping them. A lot of times us helping them is micromanaging them. But with him, he's been saddled many times, and so I would be more inclined to interrupt the pattern. Good. So I'm very happy with that first go, because that a lot of times is a tipping point for a horse. If they can be saddled without blowing up right away, that can be a really big progress step. Now you can see how loose this cinch was. I just took out a lot of slack. So this might be a little different story now that it's not loose on him anymore. Now the other thing is I like to give him some space here. You know, I think a horse that feels claustrophobic, if he's got me standing right next to him. It's interesting about human nature is human nature usually tells us, try to do more and try to hold the horse, you know, down and control every movement, every inch of things. But horse psychology says the more space I have, the better I feel. So they feel more comfortable the less we do. We feel more comfortable the more control we have, which is also maybe one of the reasons why I think horses are so good for us. You know, it really challenges us to kind of be better people in a lot of ways, whether it's patience, emotional fitness, grit, and kind of stick-to-itiveness with a horse that's more challenging. There's just a lot of things that we can learn from horses in general, but especially a horse like this. Now, the other aspect of this is you wouldn't want to get on a horse like him and have him be underexposed. So he's having some trouble here. As soon as I took a little bit of control and tried to change directions, he got a little bothered right there. So I think you guys could see that in the video. Maybe we can even replay it, but it's subtle. All this stuff is subtle. But again, I'm acknowledging all these little moments with him. And so I was gonna just change directions, but because he got a little tight there, I'm giving him a little bit of relief here facing forward, because that's the moment where he got bothered was in the facing me right there. Okay, now we'll ease him off this way. And see how willingly he did that? That was very nice. But it's because I acknowledged that he got a little worried in that change of direction, which none of that is unusual. Horses get more uncomfortable through transitions, whether it's changing directions or going faster or slower. But this is the kind of stuff that he's going to have to get more comfortable with, because when we're riding him, what's interesting is when we're riding him, we have a lot more control than we do on the ground, or we take a lot more control when we're on their back versus when we're on the ground. So he's got to be able to handle that leadership from the saddle. Well, that went pretty well, I would say. Again, a little bit of trouble here. Changing eyes, so we're gonna have to get that a little smoother. Well, that was pretty good. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to release him to me stepping up and down in the stirrups. I think I'll just go ahead and use this rope. This may not be the best idea, but it seems like a good time here to do this. Now, one of the tests that I do when I do this, and again, I'm trying to release him to being mounted, so I'm trying to create a little bit of a pattern here of maybe cantering and doing some circles and then coming in and getting mounted. But I want to get a baseline of what does it take to lower his head. So that took maybe 4 pounds of pressure, just a guess. So now the question is, when I'm standing in the stirrups or next to him there, how much does it take? So that was about the same. You can see his head get up, kind of get a little bracy there. So I'll just pet on him here and then kind of step down. Ask him to lower his head again. So we need to be able to make this transition here without that nervousness. Good, there's a little lick and chew. A little bit harder there to get his head to come down, but getting better. I don't really want him to get counterbent. Good, I'll take that. So I like to walk him out of it because when he gets a little bothered, he kind of sucks back and thinks about stopping. So I'm gonna create a little pattern here of moving him around after mounting and just kind of getting him comfortable, because that's what we're going to do once we do step on him. Now, I think nowadays most people understand to mount both sides of the horse. But just because you can step up and down on one side doesn't mean you can step up and down on both sides. But you can see that bothers him, just me stepping up and down. And again, I think the experiences of him being ridden, now it's hard to get his head down. You know, the experiences of him getting ridden weren't positive for him. And so he's probably more worried. All right, we'll take that. So I'm pretty happy with where we kind of got with that today, considering what the owner told me he was at. There's still a few more steps that I need to do with him to convince me that he's going to be okay to ride. What I'm not going to do is try to be a better bronc rider than the previous person. My goal is to set him up for success where he's comfortable with me stepping on him. And so that's what we're going to do. So stay tuned for the next videos, and we'll watch Scout's progression.